Today is a big day for our program as we'll be sending off Season 2 and moving into the off-season for Season number 3. But before we get into that, we do have a commitment from Michael Schuler, a 66 overall wide receiver, and he should probably be our 5th or 6th wide receiver next year. The Heisman Trophy is going to Terrence Marks from Washington. He had 53 over total touchdowns, 3,700 yards. But let's look at a recap of our season. We went 0-12 in back-to-back years, so we still don't have a win with this team. But we had a pretty rough start to this season, getting blown out by our first 4 opponents, 2 of them being ranked, and then we came within a score of Mississippi State, which was pretty surprising. And then we followed that up with an overtime loss to Florida Atlantic. I think that was the game where our wide receivers just kept dropping the ball late in the game. Got blown out by Memphis, came within a field goal of Troy, lost by a few scores to Kent State, and then came within a field goal again of Louisville. So this team can win games. We're just not getting it done. Lost to ranked California and lost to number 1 overall Michigan. 4 of those games were winnable, 8 were not. So we'll look to improve upon that in the coming seasons. Rice, Florida, Air Force, Washington, Clemson, Minnesota, and Kent State are your conference championships winners for season number 2. And now here's all the bowl results. You can pause and see if your favorite team is in here. But we're going to scroll down to the game that matters, of course, the national championship. And Oklahoma is the national champion for year number 2, beating Michigan 30-18. Michigan dropped all the way down to 6th after this loss, but looks like Michigan just couldn't run it on the ground as they're known to do. And Oklahoma just put up 13 points in the 4th quarter, kind of sealing this game. Here's a look at all the stats for Michigan right here. So they were able to get a lot of pressure on Oklahoma, but it looks like it really didn't matter. So Downing for Oklahoma threw for 2 touchdowns. Whitmore ran in for 2 touchdowns. He also caught 1, so 3 touchdowns for Whitmore. Really carried this team on his back. Here's all the defensive stats. And here's the final top 25 after the national championship. Oklahoma, Washington, Texas, Stanford, Georgia Southern back up here after losing Hartman last year to the draft. And here are all the other teams that made the top 25, obviously. And here are all the teams that just missed out of the top 25. Now here we're going to quickly go through all of the conferences, so pause if you want to see how your team did. But we're just covering the top 10, so if they're not here, they didn't make the top 10 in their own conference. Just quickly going through it. Try to make this video a little shorter than normal. But now we can look at into Heisman Trophy winner Terrence Marks a little more deeply. 46 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 4,000 yards. Definitely deserving of the award. And you can see he has a bunch of other awards that he's got. And he had 9 touchdowns on the ground. Cedric Rivero was the runner-up this year in his first year as a starter. 33 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 13 on the ground. He might look to win the trophy next year, as he doesn't look like he'll be NFL ready right now. Here's a list of all the All-Americans. Will we have someone on this list? If we do, it would be just because of stats, probably on defense, but no one on first team. And no one on second team. Maybe some freshmen. We had a ton of freshmen play this year. Did anyone make first team all freshmen? No one on offense. We do get Phil Pearson, our linebacker here. Probably because he had, 86 tackles, a pick, a forced fumble, 11 TFLs. I would say that's pretty deserving of freshman All-American. That's a great honor for him. Did we get anyone else? No. So now let's jump into some of the other award winners. Terrence Marks wins the Maxwell. Walter Camp also goes to him. Bednarik to Chris Hall. And then Degurski also to Chris Hall. O'Brien to Terrence Marks. We only have 2 winners so far. Justin Red wins the Walker. Clay Hawkins, the Biletnikoff. Titus Brown, the Mackey. The Outland goes to Eric Walton. Remington goes to Eric Walton. Lombardi to Corey Hill. Chris Hall also gets the Best Linebacker Award. Thorpe goes to Xavier Moore. And Groza to Bobby Freeman. And the Ray guy goes to Nicholas Douglas. Best Returner, Booker Peoples. I didn't see any Drakes on that list in the top 10. But let's jump into our season stats for this year. Stephen Jude in his first year as a starter. Not that great, but still better than last year. 13 touchdowns, 15 picks. Will Martin, now looks like to be our lead back, our best running back so far. 100 attempts for him, 411 yards, so solid first season. Only 2 touchdowns though. Looks like Stephen Jude got a lot of those. And Aaron Jones, he had an okay year, but not as good as Martin. So Martin will definitely be our number 1 heading into next year. Basically dominated every statistical category. 4 fumbles for Stephen Jude, so a lot of turnovers in year number 1. Eric Bishop leads our team in receptions again, and until we have a better line, that's probably going to stay. But Fontenot leads in yards with 629 and 5 touchdowns. A solid freshman campaign for him. He'll look to build on that in season number 2. Bishop got 3, Butler got 2, Weaver and the 2 Griffins on the team both got 1. Fontenot has the longest play in team history at 64. And the drops were a big story this year. Butler, of course, he's just a freshman. 7 drops for us that killed us in some of those games. Looks like we had 5 pancakes for Jonathan Clark, so good season for him. Phil Pearson led our team in tackles and got that freshman All-American award for it. Ryan Wachowski, a good season, 12 TFLs. Pearson also with 11. Sherman with 10. 5 sacks for Brandon Stevenson and Blake Summers, 4 for Wachowski, and a couple of other players had 2, and I'm sure a bunch of players had 1. 2 picks for Matt Carey is all it takes to be our leading interception leader. Gross, Macklin, Pearson, and Logan got 1. 1 fumble for Cooper, Pearson, Sherman, and Porter. And the only guys on defense to score this year were Gross, Sherman, and Carey. Luke Macklin, our first year as our kicker, went 15 of 16 with a long of 49. Got the job done, but I think he missed like a 50-yarder or something. We were just testing his range or something. Matt Long is in our second year as a punter. The number of punts has gone down, which means we are improving. But still almost 2,000 punting yards. We need to reduce that even further. Butler was our leading returner. He had 1,000 kick return yards and a touchdown for us. A few other players got a few returns. Only 105 yards on the punt return, so we still need to force more punts next year. And now let's look at some of the top stat holders this year. Marks leading the country in passing yards and touchdowns and rating. He's definitely going to be one of the best overall quarterbacks taken in this year's draft. Stephen Jude cracks the top 10 in interceptions with 15. Gotta improve that next year. Looks like Georgia Southern's quarterback had a great year too. And now we can look at the rushing leader was Nick Mays, 2,500 yards on 429 carries, 23 touchdowns for Mays. Looks like McQueen led in touchdowns with 24. Yes, he did. Just highlighting some other guys here that we played against. 195 yards a game. That is just insane. Look at receiving. Kenny Hardy had a huge lead in the number of receptions. They just forced him the ball at Texas State. 1,800 yards, only 9 touchdowns. Clay Hawkins was the touchdown leader who got one of the rewards. And we can look at drops. So Butler would be up here tied for 10th, I guess, or 9th. We look at defense. Chris Hall led the country in tackles, the 117. Solos are glitched, but TFL's 29 for Antonio Scales. And then for sacks, 11.5 was enough to lead the country this year, so kind of a down year for sacks. 7 touchdowns. Anderson and Vince Wilson hold that title for most interceptions this year. 6 forced fumbles by Thad Douglas. And a bunch of players recovered 3. 2 touchdowns for 4 different players this year. And kicking the ball, Macklin was top 10 in accuracy. Of course, kicking the ball in this game is really easy, but 56 was the longest field goal attempted got this year. And most punt yards. Just kind of getting through the rest of these stats right here. Butler was top 10 in kick return, but of course we had a bunch of kick returns because we were getting scored on all year, and 2 touchdowns was enough to lead in terms of kick return. Punt return, not really a lot of exciting things here. So now we can look at career stats because we have 2 years of play. I skipped passing and rushing just because it wasn't really that interesting. Bishop is our leading catch guy, and Jamal Griffin is leading in yards. Fontenot is now our leading receiver in touchdowns. Anthony Henry in his final season leads our team in tackles. He will go down as the leading tackler in school history. Brandon Stevenson leading in sacks. Robert Stanford in picks. And for fumbles, no one has gotten their second fumble yet. And no one has gotten a second defensive touchdown yet. So in terms of offense, we were one of the worst in the country. And Washington was, of course, the best. Terms of passing yards, I think we were about middle of the road, kind of on the higher side, but our rushing attack, let's go down and see this. So we were about top 3rd in terms of passing yards, but rushing yards, we were dead last. Gotta improve the run game next year. Points per game, we were bottom 10. Passing touchdowns, also bottom 20 maybe. Bottom 10 in rushing touchdowns. In terms of defense, we were not the worst. We are top 10 worst passing defenses. And pretty good rushing defense, but that's kind of just the standard for this game. Points allowed, we were the number 1 scored against team this year. Probably bottom 3rd in terms of sacks. Not a lot of fumbles. Bottom 10 in terms of interceptions. So we have a lot to work on for year number 3. You can definitely see how we went 0-12. But our 3rd down percentage was all right. 4th down percentage was all right. So there's some good news for us there. See, just some of these teams. We didn't really stick out in any of these, but we had the worst defensive red zone percentage. Just a lot of work needs to be done on defense this year. Looking at turnovers, we were bottom 10 in terms of ratio. 17 thrown interceptions. A few lost fumbles from Jude this year. And not a lot of takeaways to make up for it. So if we could just get some more takeaways, we won't have such a bad ratio. So now we're on to the best part, the offseason. We're going to start with the top job in college football being LSU. And I just wanted to highlight this because I think this is kind of crazy, but they're going to go with Air Force head coach John Rudzinski, who's an option, has the option playbook. So LSU is now a triple option team, which is just crazy. But we have two new coordinators. Of course, both of ours got fired. We have Tracy Claeys coming over from Temple. He was fired from Temple, so we're just getting kind of their loose ends right here. As I think he's probably only level 1. We'll have to look at that later. And now our new offensive coordinator is Lee Collier, coming over from Rutgers. He's also coming from a 2-10 team and was fired. So we have 2 fired coordinators joining the team, probably very low leveled, and we'll just have to deal with it and improve the team with our recruiting and training results. But our offensive coordinator, Brian Perkins, who was fired from us, he's going to go over to Tulsa, and I could not find defensive coordinator Mike McIntyre, so I don't know, I guess he retired or is out of the game now. We only have 3 players leaving this year. Timmy Neal, 13 attempts, negative 18 yards. If we were facing an easier last opponent, I probably would have tried to get him to at least positive yards before leaving the team, but we faced the number 1 team in the country at the time. So he's going to finish off with negative yards. Anthony Henry will be our career tackle leader. He also had 3 sacks and a few 8 for loss. No turnovers for him, but just the tackle leader is what he'll be known for at Carolina Atlantic. And Howard Foster, a 48 overall receiver, he had 2 catches for 56 yards this year, also dropped a pass. So he did get involved, got on the field, but at 48 overall, not really expecting much. Let's look at some of the draft players for the teams we faced this year. Ohio State has, looks like 5. Charlotte has their left end, Tyler Robinson, going to the draft. Texas has 7 players going to the draft, a few first-round players. Actually, 8 players they're going to the draft. Mississippi State has 1 player. Florida Atlantic has 2 players. They have their quarterback, Dustin Davis, projected to go to the 5th round. Louisville has 1 cornerback going. Cal has 5 players going to the draft, including probably 2 quarterbacks, actually. Michigan has, looks like we have 8, maybe more, 9 players going to the draft. Arizona, this is actually from last year. We played them last year, but they have 2 players, so maybe they were in that game that we played against them last year. Michigan State, who we played last year, they have 4 players going to the draft, including their running back. Probably got a lot of yards against us. And I don't know why I'm looking at stats here, because I didn't do that for the teams we faced this year, but you can see we have the last year's Biletnikoff winner for Michigan State. Notre Dame had a ton of players go to the draft. It looks like just 9 on this first page, but I think there's more below. And they have a few players declaring, including a sophomore. So more than 10 players going for Notre Dame. Texas A&M, looks like they have 6 on this first page. Or maybe 8 total. Georgia Southern has 4 players. They have built up a pretty good program here in this series, including 1 junior declaring. Florida State has 4 players going, including a junior in Antoine Johnson. And so we'll come back to the draft in the next episode when we look at the Season 2 draft. But let's go to transfer requests. We have 2 players coming in here. We have Green, the defensive tackle, and Waller, a linebacker. I think Green will definitely get a lot of playing time here. Waller, maybe not. But we're going to take both of them anyway, as we definitely still have a lot of room on this team. So heading into recruiting, we currently have the 119 ranked class with only 6 recruits right now. Of course, I have a lot of recruiting restrictions in this series, so kind of making it challenging. I just kind of quickly showed what guys we have already committed, but you can see them here also. I just wanted to show these are the final guys I'm going after. Going after Warren Smith, Eric Hamilton, just a little bit of points trying to get him committed. James Daniels, Damian Daniels, Michael Jefferson, and Jonathan Patterson, the athlete. Just offered him a scholarship, so these are the players. We got Jonathan Patterson. Frank Summers committed. We didn't even have a lead on him. James Daniels commits. Eric Hamilton commits. Let's go by each one. So Frank Summers commits. The quarterback did not commit anywhere. We already had these receivers here. We already had Joel Washington, and the computer kind of added these other players to the board, so we didn't really care about these guards. James Daniels commits. That's a huge for our just building for the future of the line. Eric Hamilton commits. He'll probably be a starter next year or a backup. Holy Cross we already had committed. Linebacker Luke Hopkins commits at the last minute. Corner, we already had Harrison. Damian Daniels goes to Troy. They dumped a lot of points into him, at least 7,000, I think. And some of these other guys did not commit. Michael Jefferson also does not commit. I really wanted to get more corners, and it just did not work out for us. We already had the safety, and Jonathan Patterson, who is looking to be a quarterback, is committed to us, a 4-star player. That'll be huge for us. Now let's look at where our final class is. So we are bumped up to the 103rd class in the country. Not that great, but this is what I was kind of expecting, as I was really trying to go off after some players that are going to make an impact early, as we got a lot of freshmen last year, and it looks like we have a bunch of walk-ons at 1-star overall. I didn't really recruit any of these guys. I think a few of them will make the team though. So overall, an okay class. Could have been a lot better, but really just trying to shore up some of those final holes to make a complete team, really. Notre Dame had the top class, as they normally do. Let's move on. So let's move on to training results. We're going to start with our athlete, 4-star athlete, Jonathan Patterson. And looking at his skills, he has 84 speed, 65 catching, 84 throw power, so he's definitely a quarterback. And besides quarterback, he could maybe be a slow running back or maybe a developmental wide receiver. But with 84 speed, he's just not quite fast to play anywhere else for me, so he's definitely going to quarterback. So on to position changes. Now that Nate Adams has sit out the red shirt from transferring, we can move Kenny inside to guard to fill a need there. And then James Daniel, who we just recruited, will be a day 1 starter at left guard. He loses a little bit of points, but we have to fill that need there. Eric Hamilton was a 61 overall recruit when we were recruiting him. He went up to a 67 overall, so just wanted to highlight that we got the gem there. We're going to move Hopkins into middle linebacker, and then Keller, he's going to be now the backup linebacker. Top overall is the transfer, Nate Adams, but Aaron Jones is the highest player that we've recruited, although he's not the starter. And going down here, looking for someone who's really stood out in the offseason, and that is going to be Eric Bishop. He got 6 overall points at the tight end position, and he'll have to battle with new tight end Washington. Joey Logan, one of the walk-ons. So two of the walk-ons got huge boosts, and a lot of these walk-ons trying to save their positions on these teams. We can look at the fastest, the strongest, the most agile players for us. So now it's on to cut day. We have to cut 12 players, and the thing in this game is that if you don't see the field for a single snap in a season, you automatically get redshirted. So Roden and Birch here, they got redshirted. They were quarterbacks for us. They played in like the first game of season 1, but didn't really see the field after Parker was our quarterback selected in year number 1. So they'll be the first 2 cuts. Hopefully they move on to like Division 2 or something and finish out their college careers. Now we have Pierre Taylor. He didn't really see the field at all for us, didn't record a single statistic. So he will be cut. Doherty, another backup player. Even in year number 1, he was a backup player, so he has not seen the field at all in this series. Chris Hill, he was a starter for 2 games in year number 1, 14 tackles for him, but he didn't play this year, so we have to move on from him. Daniels, I think he was a backup in year number 1. He only had 6 tackles. Now moving on to linebacker, we have Duncan, who also started 2 games, but he only got 6 tackles in year number 1, didn't play this year at all. Coming down here to Akeem Floyd. He started 7 games for us. Or let's go to Joel Fisher first. He was a backup player in year number 1, only had 1 tackle for us, but still contributed to the team. Akeem Floyd, 7 games started, 23 tackles, just not enough room on the team. It's his senior year. You hate to do it, but he's not going to see the field this year if he didn't see it last year. Justin Davis did not play at all for us, really. Free safety, we cut him. And then the last 2 players, I decided to cut the linemen. These guys both started all 12 games year number 1. Myron Henry and also Jordan Garcia. I just wanted to make room for some of the younger guys, so hopefully they go off and play. They did play this year, I guess, but just had to get onto that. But that's going to be the end of the offseason. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. Next time we'll be taking a look at the season 3, new team, red shirts, all that, and hopefully a fresh new start for this team. I will catch you guys in the next one. Goodbye.